Let me tell you about a trade that happened about a decade and a half and 3 feet of beard ago. Consider this. A lot of the people watching this video right now were never alive in a world in which Joe Thornton was a Boston Bruin. Well, he was, and the day he was traded was seismic. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the Joe Thornton trade tree, and it's a little bit bigger than you think. With the first overall pick in the 1997 NHL entry draft, the Boston Bruins select from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Joe Thornton. There's a lot of pressure that comes with being the first overall pick. First overall, you're expected to be the best. In 59 games in his final OHL season, Joe Thornton put up 41 goals, 81 assists for 122 points. Not to mention he's huge. When he's drafted, he's 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". It's gonna grow into that jumbo, some might call it. But when you're the first overall pick, it's not enough to just be the best. You have to make the NHL right away and have an immediate impact. It's incredibly rare for the first overall pick to not play in the NHL the year after they're drafted. And in the 97-98 season, Joe Thornton did. And in 55 games as an NHL rookie, Joe Thornton had 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points. Consider the narrative around Jack Hughes this season. Oh, he's struggling at the NHL level. He hasn't really produced. He had 21 points. He had 3 times the number of points Thornton did as a rookie. And then to add to the pressure, Patrick Marleau, the second overall pick in 1997, he was playing with the Sharks. 13 goals, 32 points. Much better. What if the Bruins whiffed? What if they made a mistake? It's okay, maybe this kid will redeem himself in the playoffs. No, 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 points in 6 games. May I introduce you to a little word called patience. In his next season, Joe Thornton had 41 points. In the following season, he had 60. In the season after that, he had 71 points, 37 of them goals. He took a bit of a dip with 68 points and then followed that up with a 36-goal, 101-point season. Joe Thornton had arrived. Then came 03-04. 23 goals, 73 points in 77 games. Still really good, but Then in a 7-game playoff series against the Montreal Canadiens, no less, in 2004, Joe Thornton goose eggs across the board. And that's when things get lost in the wash. The story of, oh, Joe Thornton can't do it in the playoffs. He's soft. He doesn't care. He was playing with torn rib cartilage, which, and I'm not a doctor, sounds pretty painful. There's the 04-05 lockout, but he has an excellent season in Switzerland, comes back, and in his first 23 games in 05-06 in the new look NHL, Thornton has 33 points in 23 games. He's back, and in a big way. And rather than hang on to him, the Boston Bruins go, you know what? Let's sell high. And in a stunner of a trade on November 30th, 2005, the San Jose Sharks acquire Joe Thornton from the Boston Bruins. The trade was as follows. Joe Thornton, obviously, goes to the San Jose Sharks. The Boston Bruins acquire defenseman Brad Stewart, forward Wayne Primo, and forward Marco Sturm. Can you imagine a trade today where one of the best players in the league, a player who is well above a point a game, is traded and there are no draft picks whatsoever? None. That's the first thing that stood out to me from this trade. But hey, maybe these are young up-and-coming players, right? After all, Brad Stewart, Marco Sturm, Wayne Primo, all of them were former first-round picks. The problem is Brad Stewart was from 1998, Marco Sturm from 1996, which is before Thornton, and Wayne Primo 1994, way before Thornton. These were 3 well-established NHL players, which if you have a chance to add those players to your roster, why not do it? Unless you're giving up Joe Thornton. In 1,104 games, Joe Thornton has put up 251 goals, 804 assists, 1,055 points, and those are just his Sharks stats. This dude got drafted in 1997, then played for 7 or 8 years, was a boss in most of them, and then had another Hall of Fame career. But forget the entire career, forget the decade and a half that Thornton's been on the San Jose Sharks. There were indicators right away that that trade might have been a mistake. If you trade a guy who scored 33 points in 23 games, you better make sure he doesn't go on to score another 92 in 58 with the team you traded him to. and that's what Joe Thornton did. In the 58 games after this trade, Joe Thornton only put up 20 goals with the San Jose Sharks. 20 goals, that's pretty good. It's not amazing. 72 assists. Here you go, here's a puck for you, puck for you, puck for you, and everyone in the Sharks lit it up. Most notably, Jonathan Cheechoo won the Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy with 56 goals. The season before, he had 28, which is good, but half of 56. In the 2005-2006 season, before the Joe Thornton trade, Jonathan Cheechoo had 7 goals. Afterward, he had 49. For the 2005-2006 season, Joe Thornton was a first-team All-Star, won the Art Ross Trophy with 125 points on the Bruins and Sharks combined, and won the Hart Trophy as the league's MVP. So based on that criteria alone, who do you think won the trade? In the years that passed, Joe Thornton has been in the top 10 in Hart voting 5 times. He was 5th in Selke voting as recently as 2015-16, when, by the way, the San Jose Sharks went to the Stanley Cup final. But Joe Thornton disappears in the playoffs. Not a thing based in reality, no. In 144 career playoff games, he has 25 goals, but we're just going to ignore the 90 assists? That's not a thing? 115 points. Joe Thornton's 144 playoff games with the San Jose Sharks would be enough to get him into the top 100 in NHL all-time playoff games played, but he had a career before the Sharks, didn't he? If you include his Bruins numbers, he's actually at 179 Stanley Cup playoff games played, which puts him 37th all-time, one behind Henri Richard. Also, one ahead of Chris Kunitz? Underrated. Here's a fascinating thing though. At the 2020 trade deadline, a season which is still ongoing apparently, Joe Thornton was upset that he didn't get traded to a cup contender because the Sharks are bad. Let's say Joe Thornton comes back with the Sharks and then maybe gets traded somewhere. This tree could continue. But until we find out the answer to that, we're not done talking about this trade tree because Boston's got something to say. Now, Brad Stewart was not a bad defenseman for them, and he played 103 games as a member of the Boston Bruins and put up 48 points. Wayne Primo, always more of a mucker kind of grinder guy. He only put up 29 points for the Bruins, but in 101 games of service. Still not quite like Joe Thornton, but you know, but a player who just does not get enough credit, and one of the more criminally underrated players of his generation, I'm gonna say it. Marco Sturm, man, that guy was a Bruin for a long time. 302 games as a member of the Boston Bruins. He put up 193 points with them, 106 of them goals. And he scored some big goals too. He scored at the Winter Classic against the Philadelphia Flyers, some playoff game winners. I know Leon Draisaitl is wrecking the NHL right now and actually just won the Art Ross Trophy, but Marco Sturm is one of the best German-born hockey players of all time. And the Bruins did end up trading him to the LA Kings for future considerations. And as we're going to learn in another trade tree that we have planned, sometimes future considerations is a lot. Sometimes it's nothing. Brad Stewart and Wayne Primo, though, less than nothing. The Boston Bruins sent Brad Stewart and Wayne Primo, who are a package deal at this point, along with a 4th-round pick in 2008 to the Calgary Flames for Chuck Kovaceau, another guy who I thought was pretty underrated, and Andrew Ference. Again, the Bruins don't quite get Joe Thornton quality out of this deal, but they keep getting service. They keep getting games played. Chuck Kovaceau put up 84 points in 158 games as a Boston Bruin. Again, roughly a half a point a game player is nothing to sneeze at. And Andrew Ference, what can we say about Andrew Ference? So there you go, any Bruins fans watching this video. You feel better about yourself, you're feeling better about the trade. What was that? Oh, the 4th-round pick in the trade. Do we tell him? Well, since you asked, the Calgary Flames used that 4th-rounder in 2008 that they got from the Boston Bruins to select TJ Brodie. Yeah, he ended up being pretty good. But listen, that has nothing to do with the Bruins, okay? Because with these trade trees, you know, people keep sending me ideas and stuff, and oh, look, this 6th-rounder turned into... Yeah, it's cool that 6th-rounder turned into someone, but it's not like the team got fleeced. You shouldn't punish the team or think less of the team for trading a 6th-rounder, or in this case, a 4th-rounder. You gotta praise the Flames scouting department. So we talked about Kovaceau, we mentioned the pick that ended up becoming TJ Brodie, Andrew Ference, and I know where a bunch of the Bruins fans watching this are going. What has Andrew Ference done that Joe Thornton has not? Okay, well, they've both been captains. Ference definitely hasn't won the Hart Trophy. Oh, He won the Stanley Cup. And let me expand on that further. Chuck Kobasu was traded to the Minnesota Wild for a second-round pick in 2011 and Craig Weller. We'll get to that 2011 second-round pick in a moment because that's an interesting one, but Craig Weller is later packaged along with Byron Bitts and a second-round pick in 2010 to the Florida Panthers for Matt Bartkowski and Dennis Seidenberg. And again, the Bruins give up a pick that ends up having a decent little career so far. That second-round pick in 2010 ended up being Alex Petrovic. And Matt Bartkowski was fine. He was a serviceable player for the Boston Bruins. In 131 games, he had 24 points, none of them goals. He did have one career playoff goal as a Boston Bruin, his only goal as a Boston Bruin, and it happened to be the first goal in the Boston Bruins' 5-4 overtime defeat of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Game 7, 2013. But who's counting? I've forgotten about it. Why do you keep bringing that up? But the other part of that deal, Dennis Seidenberg, another guy who, in 2011, won the Stanley Cup. Andrew Ference played 373 games as a member of the Boston Bruins and 69 playoff games. Nice. Dennis Seidenberg, 401 games as a member of the Boston Bruins, 50 playoff games. Between Andrew Ference and Dennis Seidenberg alone, the Boston Bruins got 774 games of service from two very good defensemen and 119 playoff games played. If you add up just all the regular season games played from all the players I mentioned in this trade tree for the Boston Bruins, they've played 1,569 games. One last thing, the second rounder from 2011. The Bruins used that pick on a very promising young player named Alexander Koklachov. And even though he only played 9 games in the NHL, you might remember Koklachov's name from one of the most high-profile trades that never was. As the tale supposedly goes, the Boston Bruins had a package made for the Calgary Flames that included a first-round pick, Matt Bartkowski, another part of this trade, and Alexander Koklachev. In return, they would get Jarome Iginla. At the last moment, Jarome Iginla decided, I want to go to Pittsburgh instead. So he did. And as long as we're talking about decisions biting you relatively immediately, it would be the Boston Bruins eliminating the Pittsburgh Penguins in a 4-game sweep in the 2013 Eastern Conference Final. And then Iginla ended up signing with the Bruins later anyway, and he still never won a cup, and it's a crime! It's a crime, I will never get over it. But where are we on the Joe Thornton trade? I mean, the saying is, if you get the best player in a deal, you win the deal. It's not always necessarily true. It's like I before E, except after C. It's a rule that has a million exceptions. But man, Thornton's one of the best players of his generation, one of the best playmakers of his generation, and he's probably going to go down with a Hall of Fame career, over 1,000 games played with the Sharks, over 1,000 points with the Sharks. But the Boston Bruins, over the years, just kept getting service out of these deals. It wasn't MVP caliber, but they got games. They got quality games played, and they even managed to find a couple key pieces, useful pieces, that helped them go all the way and win a Stanley Cup in 2011. Is that a fleecing? Listen, the initial trade, it ain't good. But what the Bruins managed to do afterwards to make it better helped the team in the long run. Could they have reached the promised land a little sooner if they had never made that deal? Well, that's a different conversation entirely. Just imagining a Bruins team with both Joe Thornton and then Zdeno Chara in their primes, it's hard to imagine them not winning a cup, but we'll never know. So, a decade and a half removed, what do you think of this deal? Leave a comment in the comment box down below. So that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. Don't trade your franchise cornerstone when he's in the middle of a career year. Or maybe do.